Welcome everybody to this in the second in the series that we've been doing, and we'll be doing this year a series of 5 between presented by Be Slavery Free and also by Embode. And we are really enjoying having this partnership together to be able to do that. My name's Fuzz Kiddo, and I am the co-director of Be Slavery Free. In a tick, we'll introduce Artie. Carolyn is the other person who is the other co-director of Be Slavery Free, and she will be coming on the end when it comes to the question time. And so we are looking today at probably one of the key ones, which is in child labour, particularly in this international year of, what is it, Caroline?
The elimination of child labour. We're going to do it by 2025.
But looking at root causes is really important. And I have a very good friend, and his mother, when he was younger, used to get incredibly bad headaches. I think he actually caused most of them. But she would take the analgesic, the headache tablets, to treat the pain of these headaches that she could get. She went in for a very simple varicose veins operation. And when she went under the anesthetic, the pressure was so great that it burst what was an aneurysm, a weakness on the major artery going to the brain. It burst, caused a massive brain hemorrhage. She was in a coma for a whole month and then died, leaving her husband with 7 children. If they knew about the aneurysm, they could have done a simple operation, just put in a shunt and replaced the weakness, and she would have lived and would have been no problems. But what they did was they continually treated the symptom, which was the headache, and did not get to the root cause. And so when it comes to child labour, we wanted in this session to spend the time of digging into why does it happen? What are the root causes of child labour? And we're not going to go to solutions. We want to linger with the roots, because so often, unless we know that, we're never going to get to the solutions, which is going to eliminate child labour. And tonight we have some very, very helpful people who are going to give us some great insights. And I'm going to let Artie do that. Artie Kapoor is the one of the best known and most highly respected people when it comes to human rights, and particularly to child labour consultancy. And she works in a number of industries and has been involved in the area for many, many years. Love working with her, have a huge respect for her. So Artie, please, can you introduce our speakers tonight?
Buzz, absolutely, absolute privilege again to be joining you. So one of the things that, one of the reasons why we want to focus for this whole panel discussion just on root causes is because very often we find that when we're talking about child labour, we rush to the solution, and we rush to try and fix it before actually understanding the problem. And it's without understanding the problem that we actually come up with solutions that don't fit. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why we want to focus specifically on root causes without jumping to the solutions today. Further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists, who have been very, very carefully chosen because of their expertise. Our first speaker is Ms. Uğur Gülderer, and she is the general manager of the Genç Hayat Foundation, and which is a Turkish organization, meaning the Young Lives Foundation, that strives to equip and improve the lives of young people between the ages of 11 and 18. And in this International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor, Genç Hayat Foundation has been especially focused on improving the living conditions of child migrant workers who come from rural areas of Turkey, as well as neighboring countries. I will introduce the other speaker now as well. We'll be hearing from him after Uğur. His name is Mr. Kevin Bosson. He's the Sustainability Representative for Africa for Lindt Sprüngli. Kevin is an expert in governance and corporate social responsibilities, working as the Sustainability Representative for Africa and the Global Topic Lead for Social Issues at Lindt Sprüngli since 2019. But from 2012 to 2019, Kevin was working as the Program Manager for Africa for the Fair Labor Association, FLA, where he conducted various assessments and researches on labor standards, including child labor. And Kevin is based in Cote d'Ivoire in Ivory Coast. So one of the things that, one of the reasons why we want to focus for this whole panel discussion just on root causes is because very often we find that when we're talking about child labor, we rush to the solution and we rush to try and fix it before actually understanding the problem. And it's without understanding the problem that we actually come up with solutions that don't fit. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why we want to focus specifically on root causes without jumping to the solutions today. So Uğur, I'll hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arti. Thank you, Faz.
No problem.
I'm Uğur Gülderer. I'm the General Manager of Young Lives Foundation, as Arti told about it. I'm so grateful to be here with you. Thank you for the opportunity. So I want to talk about Turkey and seasonal agriculture in Turkey. So we can go on, Özgür. Turkey is located between Europe and Asia. It's a multicultural bridge with various ethnic groups, and there are almost 83 million people. 22 million of them are children below 18 years old, and we have an export amount about $170 billion, and $20.7 billion of it is agriculture, food, and beverage. So we can go on. As you see the map of Turkey, we have about 30% of our lands are agricultural lands, but there are only 6 million people, and mostly of them are elder people in rural areas, in agricultural areas. So there is a big need in harvest time to collect the products in the land. So we can go on. What Young Lives Foundation does, as Arti said, our target group is children and young people between 11 and 18 years old. We are trying to establishing models for problems. Prevention of child labor is one of our main subjects, and we are working with government, with international NGOs, with companies, with United Nations for prevention of child labor in Turkey. And what are the numbers? According to the Turkish Statistical Institution's rates in 2019, there are 720,000 child workers in Turkey. It was 900,000 child workers in 2020. So you can easily see a decrease on the numbers, but this is excluding Syrian refugee children, only for Turkish children. And in sectorial distributions, we can see the agriculture is almost 31%. It's about 220,000 children. But what we see, the children between 5 and 14 years old, they have a big ratio. It's about 64% because they travel with their families from southern eastern part of Turkey to the harvest areas, to the agricultural areas. So they easily can find a place to work. And from April to October, there is the harvest seasons. For some products, for example, hazelnuts, it's only 1 month. For some products, it's only 2 months, the harvest seasons. And there are families, they are specially working for one product, or they travel for 6 months. So if they travel 6 months or 7 months, we see the school dropouts will be higher. If they come and work in the harvest areas, for example, for hazelnuts, then the children can easily go to their schools back. And we see the age distribution of children who drop out. When they grow older, it will be easier for them to drop out, unfortunately. We can go on. There are many reasons, of course, why there is still child labor in Turkey. We have an not bad GDP, and we have other industries, other sectors. But when we look at the socio-economic reasons, there are limited work job opportunities in southern eastern part of Turkey. And the poverty, of course, is one of the most most important reason. They have to travel to find a work. And there are agricultural intermediaries. They bring landowners and workers together. So they take commissions from workers' wages, and it's easier for them to take commissions from the children. If a family comes with 5, 6, 7 children, they take the same commissions as they take from the adults. So this encourages also the intermediaries bring children to the farms, to the agricultural areas. And there are cultural reasons. In southern eastern part of Turkey, children are seen mostly as social security. If they have more children, the children earn more money and they take care of their parents in their elderly time. So they like to work with their children, because then the father can get the money of the children for himself, for the family actually. I cannot say himself personally, but he take the money he takes the money and he spends the money for the family. But if the children goes to a different work, has his own bank account, then it is a problem for the family income. It will be his or her private income. And other cultural reasons, they were born in this system, so they are used to it. If the children are if the grandparents are working as seasonal workers, if the mother, father are working as workers, children are easily adapting and they accept it. This is our family job, and they don't have any opportunity to improve themselves, to go to the school, to find other jobs, to see other opportunities. That's why they stay in this work cycle. There are also political reasons. For example, in 2011, after the Syrian war, many Syrian refugees came to Turkey. In first 3 years, we thought they will go back to their countries, but they didn't go. And most, half of them are children. And half of them are only in schools. The rest of them, they are still young or they are not in the education system. So it's very easy for Syrian families to work in seasonal agriculture because they don't need special work permits for them. And there is a need, of course, in the area. What happened in pandemic? Last year, everybody worked in the field because we needed that product. So the government made special registrations and gave permits for the workers. So they traveled and they worked. But in pandemic, the workers needed more hygiene, more safe areas, more shelter, and more hygiene. But on the other hand, because the education system in Turkey was like in distance learning, most of the workers' children, they couldn't get the internet, they couldn't get the laptops or telephones or tablets, so they didn't have the education. So it was very difficult them. So last words, there must be a collaboration between public institutions. We see this in Turkey. Ministry of Labor, they are working very hard. They're working with other ministries. For example, with Ministry of National Education, they have the monitoring system of children. They travel during the harvest time. And United Nations, ILO, is very active in Turkey. And NGOs and international NGOs, they are also very active in Turkey. And academia and private sector, especially in hazelnut sector, mostly companies are very active, and everyone has to be in it to make a holistic approach, because we need more awareness sessions, more trainings with the workers, with the landowners. Once I asked to the landowner, are you going to give work to the children in your land? He said, I have only 1 week. If an alien comes from the space, I will let him work also in my land, because they need people. They don't care about who works in their land. Thank you.
Ben Hozan Ergen, 14 yaşındayım. Buraya Cizre'den geldim. Ailemle birlikte çalışmaya geldim ama bu okuldan haberim olduğu günden beri bu okula geliyorum.
Akçakoca fındık toplamak için geldik. 3 senedir geliyorum ben bu okula. Arkadaşlar ayrı yerlerden geldi. Şırnak olsun, Mardin olsun, her yerden geldiler ve ben onları çok seviyorum. Aslında tatili gibi oluyor benim için. Çok mutlu oluyorum yani geldiğim için.
Öğretmenlerle çok iyiyiz, arkadaş gibiyiz, abi abla gibiyiz. Tarlada çalışmak yerine burada daha çok mutluyuz.
Buradaki okul bahçesinde top oynanabiliyor, tenis oynanabiliyor, her şey oynanabiliyor, basketbol oynanabiliyor, park bile var.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that presentation, Uğur. I just had one question I wanted to ask you, and we just saw here about some of what the children were saying at the Young Lives Foundation, and what you've presented is an overview of one particular type of child labor in the seasonal agricultural sector. And one of the things I was wondering is, what do children have to say about their experience working? I was really interested to hear about what you said about how children are born into this generation of work. And what do they, when you speak to children about that, what do they think about this? Do they ever feel like things could be different for them? Or do they feel like they want to do anything different? Interested to know what the children's points of view are.
It's also very interesting for me, Art, because most of the children in the field are proud to work with their families because they earn money, they help their families, and they earn money to be able to go to the school, to buy telephones, tablets, whatever. It will help to families' income. And in the movie, we saw also they travel with their families in Turkey. So it's like a vacation with their families, but still it's very hard work. They start at 7 o'clock in the morning and finish at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. So, but when I visit the field, I saw they are singing, they are happy to be free. But now in 10 years, every year I see most, they want to go to school.
Right.
They don't want to lose their education opportunities. So if they go to school, but in the summertime they work, it's okay for them. But if they cannot go to school, you can see their unhappiness.
So there's a growing awareness amongst children and youth about the importance of their own education. And probably their parents too, in some ways. Yes. Such a big part of that cultural aspect. So one of the other questions I wanted to ask you was, you've given like these kind of root causes and push factors for this particular type of child labor. And what about other forms of child labor in Turkey? Are the root causes and enablers the same, or are they different?
Of course, the poverty is main reason, but when the children are growing up, up to 8, after 15, between 15 and 17, we see other causes. They can be more free in other sectors. So they want to change the cities, etc. But the main reason is when they don't go to school, they miss the courses, they miss the classes. They cannot go back to the schools in older ages, and the vicious circle keeps going on.
Right, all right. Okay, thank you, Uğur. We'll hopefully have a bit more time to dialogue afterwards. But let's move on to Kevin. Kevin will speak about his experience in West Africa. And as we're bringing up the presentation right now, I'll let you start, Kevin. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Arti. Good morning, everyone. While waiting for the presentation, I'm going to introduce myself once again. My name is Kevin Bosson. I'm based in Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire. As Arti already said, I'm representative Africa Sustainability for Lindt Sprüngli. Prior to join Lindt Sprüngli, I was working for Fair Labor Association, where I have dealt with many assessments and also research about child labor. Prior to everything, I want to beg your pardon because my English is not very well. I'm not fluent in English. I'm a French-speaking guy, so maybe you will have some difficulties to follow my accentuation and how I write something. So really sorry for that, but I will try to do my best so that we can hear each other. And also, prior to everything, I would like to bring your attention to the fact that what I'm going to count is mainly some example from my own experience, because I used to do a former child laborer. So my own experience, but also experience from fields, from the work that I did during all these past years. Thank you, and also proud to be with you. So next. We are discussing the root causes of child labor, and we all know that the term child labor is defined by ILO as work that deprives children of their childhoods, their potential, and their dignity, and that is harmful to physical and mental development and interferes also with their schooling. So child labor is a widespread and complex human rights issue. That is why we are discussing today its economic, development, sociocultural, and political root causes. I will focus on West African country. Why? Because Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, the world's largest cocoa producing countries, are reported to be the most affected for the child labor issue. Both countries, and we will know why, both countries are undeveloped and agricultural-based countries. Next. As I just come to say, child labor in West Africa has economic, development, sociocultural, and political root causes. Based on my personal experience, the research and assessments that I was involved in, mainly in cocoa sector, but also in cotton and in cashew, sector in Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, for some multinational companies. I'm going to share what I know with you, and after all, we will discuss it more in depth. With regard to economic and development root causes, the first point that I would like to highlight is the poverty. Why I say that poverty is one root causes of child labor? You know, when we take poverty, it's at several levels. First of all, at the country level itself, you know that most of the Western African countries, many of Ivory Coast, Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Ghana, all these countries are undeveloped countries. They are poor countries. So it's difficult in these countries to have suitable infrastructure like a school infrastructure to have all children go to school. Even when the infrastructure exists, it's difficult to hire the suitable and needed teachers to take care of the education of children. This is at the country level itself. But poverty also affects families. All these children that are involved in work sometimes it's not because they want to do the job. It's not because families don't want to send them to school. No, it's sometimes, and most of the time, because families lack money to send them to school. Or it's because due to the fact that the family are poor, they want to survive, and to survive, they need money. Their own task sometimes is not sufficient to take care of the family. And in more effective cases, children are obliged to take part of their parents' work, or they are obliged to leave their family to go to search work in order to also contribute to the family income. We also have sometimes illness of parents. When you are in a family where your parents are ill, your father or your mother is ill, there is no, what can I say? There is no sufficient resources to take care of the family. In such families, sometimes children try to leave the family to go and look for a job in order to contribute to the family income. And these kind of children who are living in a poor families, who are living in a family where parents are ill, or who are living in a family where parents are old, they are really, they have no other means than working to earn money and support families. Other root causes of child labor in West Africa is limited access to schooling. As I just come to say, why we have such limited access to schooling? First point is because in sometimes there is no school infrastructure. But even if school infrastructure exists, some families are not able to find the necessary income, the necessary funds to pay, what can I say, to pay attention to their children or to send them to school. Because before going to school, you have to pay for the kids, you have to pay for the clothes, you have to pay for the fees. And this is not affordable sometimes in some countries for families. But one of the key factor is the lack of manpower. Because even when we were talking about ill parents or old parents, if finding a manpower is easy in communities, then families could hire such people, such young people, such adult labor to use them in their farm. But unfortunately, currently, due to many other factors, young people prefer to move to town where they expect to have more remunerable works instead of stay in their community to continue agricultural work, because agriculture is not also well rewarding, and we will talk about it currently. So the lack of adult labor, the lack of manpower also make children very vulnerable, because agricultural farmers are obliged to use any kinds of labor they find before rain. Yes, and for sure, lack of agricultural technology, lack of mechanization at agricultural level are other factors. You know, in Western Africa, farmers are, what can I say, they are working with their own forces, without mechanization, everything is done by hand. So it's difficult to conduct in time agricultural tasks. And agricultural tasks are very hard. Since there is no mechanization, the needs for manpower is very important and is increasing. Due to this fact, they are obliged to resort to children to help them in communities, in farms. As I point out also, the poverty of the countries don't allow them to have sufficient school infrastructure in country available for all children. You will find some community in which there is no school at all. Or to find the nearest school, you have to travel around 5 kilometers, 8 kilometers to 10 kilometers. It differs from country to country. But after all, the lack of school infrastructure is another another factor that brings children to work. The living standard of families related to poverty, but also related to illness, related to the old age of parents are another factor that economically justify why children are still working in farm. In addition to these economic and development root causes, we can also settle the socio-cultural aspect. And according to me, these are one of the important factors of child labor that is not really focused on, because most of the time when we talk about root causes of child labor, we directly go to economic root causes. But for me, sociocultural are also main factors that drive child labor. The first one is belief. Yes, the beliefs are key in Africa, mainly in Western African context. For example, you will hear in some family that the place of the girl is at home, meaning that girls don't have to go to school because after all, they will get to married. So the family don't need to spend money to send girls to school. With this mindset, it's difficult to send girls to school, and after all, they are obliged to be involved in household tasks and also to be involved in farm activities. You can also hear, for example, some statements saying that the eldest of the family is the figurehead of the family. So he had to stay with parents because he should be the guarantor of the tradition. So he has to keep with the family, with the father, to learn about the culture, to learn about the tradition, so that he can manage well the family in the future. With this kind of mindset, this elder will never go to school, and he will be, what can I say, he will be obliged to join family work or to move to another places to find work. You have some other culture in which before sending a child to school, they go and consult diviners. If diviners say, for example, that this child has no luck at school, he will never go to school. Parent will send him to school only if the diviner say that, okay, this guy will succeed at school, so you can go ahead. In this case, they will send the child to school. So all these beliefs prevent children from attending school and to be vulnerable for labor. But I emphasize another point, that is courage. Yes, I said that courage in some culture is synonymous of hard work. This is a bit complex to understand. I'm going to count a story that could enable. You know, for example, you can have a family, and this already occurred in Djukwe, which is a town here in Cote d'Ivoire. After the civil war that we faces in the past and previous years, a boy was joined his uncle's house, and he was schooling because his uncle had sent him to school. But after all, this uncle lost his farm because the farm was burnt also by an unknown individual. And the uncle was obliged to go to town to seek for a job with his family, with this guy. And once in the town, the uncle gets ill. He was no longer able to find money. He was no longer able to go to work in order to continuously support his family. The guy was obliged to stop going to school. And going forward, he has decided by himself to find a job and support his uncle, to contribute to pay the health care of his uncle and support the family needs. At 11 already, he started working in another people's farms to get money. And from there, he was able to support the family need. He was able to support his mother, the wife of his uncle, to contribute to the health care of his uncle, but also to be able to cover the family needs like food and other things. This guy, this boy, is found in his community as a courageous boy, as a boy who contributes to the well-being of the family. He is not seen as a child labor, but as a courageous child. We also have the mismatch between the modern and the traditional definition of child. Yes, because theoretically, we define a child as someone who has not yet 18 years old. In some families in Africa, this is not the reality. I was training some cooperative board member one day in fields, and they asked me, you, Sir Kevin, you said that you said that for a child who has not yet 18 is still a child. How about someone who at 14 has already a child himself? Is he still a child? This to show how people in fields sometimes define the term child, because for them, being a child is not subject to the age, but to other things. So coming to the political root causes, we have some institutional instability, some political and military crises that countries are facing, some lack of legal framework for protecting children's rights, but also the low involvement of public authorities sometimes in protecting children's rights. So these are some of the factors that we can identify as root causes for child labor. And I think that during the discussion that will follow, we could go in deep on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Just one question for now, which is, are there in Ivory Coast, for example, or even in Ghana, you talked about the political issues. Are there any children that migrate, from other parts of the country by themselves or across the borders, for example? Is that one of the push factors into child labor, especially the worst forms like forced child labor or trafficking?
Yeah, sure. Here in this presentation, I have not made differences between different forms of child labor, but of course, in Ghana, the movement is not so observed, but in Ivory Coast and in Cameroon, for example, you see a lot of migration of children. In Cote d'Ivoire, for example, you will find children coming from Togo, from Nigeria, from Mali, from Guinea, from Burkina Faso, who are involved in agricultural sector, but also in other sector. We talk most about agriculture, but they are also active in other sector. In Cameroon, for example, when I went there, I also found that many people from Nigeria, many young people and also children from Nigeria are present in the country working in agricultural sector.
Right.
Yes.
So that's really helpful to understand, because often when we think about child labor, we're often thinking about children only in families, but we also have children that are in child labor, particularly the worst forms, that are not with their families. And that's also really important to remember, particularly in the agricultural sectors and in cocoa. So that's wonderful. Yeah. So that's wonderful. We're going to take some questions in a moment, but just wrapping up, I just wanted to make a few wrapping up comments, which were really about the fact that what we're seeing across the presentations from both Kevin and Uğur is that the root causes are interrelated across economic factors, which is the one that is, often understood the most, but also very importantly, sociocultural and political factors. And these political factors, such as the refugee crisis with Syria into Turkey, child migrants, whether with their families or whether alone or unaccompanied, are happening at political level as well, which is always about the distribution of resources. And then we've got push factors and enablers, short-term emergencies that happen, health emergencies in the home, or migratory labor demands, opportunities for exploitation, and other forms of violence and abuse that push situations where children are going into situations of exploitation. But what's really important, and what one of the threads we've been picking up here, is about the agency of children themselves. You know, how do they feel? How do they experience their work? You know, what is their choice in all of this? And that is where it does become a bit more complex. It's not just about children being victimized. In some ways, the situation does victimize them, but in other ways, it's also about educating children, it's about educating families, and it's about the cultural value put on formal and informal forms of education. So that's some of the things I wanted to say. I'm conscious of the time, and I do want us to have some questions. And what I would ask is that we stick to looking at the problem, and as uncomfortable as it is, we sit with the questions, you know, which will, as Sahana Chattopadhyay says, you know, the questions are what is the compass for the direction we want to go in. So I want to hand over to Carolyn. Were there any questions we wanted to take from the participants? And Uğur, if you can come back on, if we can't see you, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's been some questions, and you may or may not know the answers to these, and that's fine. But in terms of Syrian refugees, and when I look at those figures, they're just gobsmacking to me. I live in Australia, and our government gets stressed when there are 3,000 refugees that turn up in a year, and you've got, what is it, 3.5 million? You know, it's just extraordinary. And yes, having seen refugee communities, yeah, I can only imagine what that does both to those communities, but also to the country that they've come to. But there's a question around these Syrian children, refugee children. Are they documented? Do they have educational status? And what's provided to them by Turkey, or is it all provided by the UNHCR?
We have Syrian refugees, 3.5 million, and we have also refugees. They are under international protection. So from Afghanistan, from Iraq, they are almost 1 million people. Oh, so it's a huge population. So in first 3 years, Syrian refugees, they had their own private schools in Arabic, because as I told, everybody thought they will go back. So they have to read and write Arabic and their curriculum. But afterwards, the government recognized that they will stay. Every child born in Turkey, they have the rights and everything to go to school, to get the social supports, etc., and financial supports. But the system work like this. For example, someone comes from Syria to the border, Gaziantep. If they are registered there, then they have to go, the children have to go to the school in Gaziantep. But in seasonal migrational working sector, they have to work in different cities. So if they go to Eskişehir, the children couldn't go to the school. But now, with Ministry of National Education, we can make some arrangements. If they go to another city, they can go to the schools in other cities also like Turkish children. If the families, Syrian families, send their children to the schools, they get a financial support from the government. If they don't get the support. So, but still, there are many children, they don't speak Turkish. So if they start from first grade, they speak Turkish fluently, but if they are 13, 14 years old and they never get to the school, then they couldn't speak Turkish. So Turkish government tries to give Turkish lessons, etc., to get the right documentation, etc. I hope it helped.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
That's very helpful. I'm just trying to pick out the questions that are not trying to get to solutions. And one of those, Trisha had a really good question about what can I do as a consumer? And we'll have a webinar on that, Trisha. So you always ask such great questions when you're on our webinars. So we look forward to you being part of that one as well. There aren't any other questions from here, but
yeah,
if people want to read more about child labour in Cocoa, Google the University of Chicago report on child labour, and it will give you all of the latest statistics.
That's the NORC report.
It's called the NORC report, N-O-R-C.
Yeah. While we're talking about education, I was wondering if we could ask one quick question to Kevin on education in West Africa. And I know that Kevin comes from a cocoa farming background, isn't that right? And so you've seen, you know, we heard from Uğur earlier about how, you know, in the hazelnut and agricultural sector in Turkey, families and children are having a different, you know, shift in culture in terms of valuing education. Are you seeing any shifts in the value of education culturally in communities in West Africa in the last, let's say, decade?
What are you saying about valuable? I don't catch well the question.
Are families and parents and children in particular seeing the value in going to school?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And here you have to, it's not, what can I say, something in linear, it depends. First of all families sees that a school is important for their children. But after all, there are other aspects. For example, families see some of their children, some of the family member who has been sent to school, they have complete the school curricula, but they have nothing to do as job. Because here in Africa, we don't go to school for education only. We go to school to change our well-being. We go to school to support our family one day. And when, for example, a family has 3, 4, 5 children, he sends the first 3 children to school. And after all, none of them succeed socially. It's become difficult for this family to still see the value of school and try to work hard to send the others to school. Apart of this, all families sees the effectiveness and the value of school, and yeah.
Right, thank you. I mean, we're seeing the complexity of the issues around education and the chicken and the egg situation, where you go to school to get a job, but because you can't get a job, what's the point of going to school? So yeah.
Another question here, Kevin, if we can. Kevin, is there much difference between children in rural agricultural areas and children in the towns and the cities?
The situation could be, one, the place, second, the type of task they do. Because even in city, and even yesterday in social media, I found a girl who worked from 6 a.m. to 9, something like this, p.m. She was selling mangoes And the mangoes is, what can I say, a big charge of mangoes on her heads. So in town also, we see many children involved in work, many children around the roads who are not in a family. In rural area also, you will find some children in agricultural sector. So, but most of the time in Cote d'Ivoire or in Ghana, when people talk about child labor, they only see cocoa sector. No, child labor is present in all sector in our countries, not only in cocoa.
Thank you. I think we need to wrap up, don't we, Fuzz and Carolyn? Yeah.
There are some good questions still flowing in, and just to let you know that we will keep a note of these questions. We get copies of them, and so we'll some of them we need whole webinars on, like how do you deal with ingrained cultural norms and differences around the place of children. But we will be picking up some of these questions in future webinars. So watch this space.
But thank you so much, Uğur and Kevin. Just wonderful, insightful presentations on some of the causes and the complexities around child labor in Turkey and in West Africa.
Great. And the next webinar that we'll be having will be on July the 29th, a Thursday, at the same time. Wherever you are live on this, it will be at this time once again. And we'll be looking this time at Carolyn.
We're going to be looking at remediation and other interventions that look to address child labour. And we'll be looking at that from a child rights perspective as well as a community development perspective. So watch this space, and we're lining up some great panellists with grassroots experience, just like we've had today.
The last one that we did was so popular. We had over 700 downloads, and I think we'll also get a very high one here because Kevin and Uğur, we want to say thank you because it is so good. And Artie, we've talked about this a number of times, haven't we? Mm-hmm. Getting the voices from on the ground who are doing it and who've had the experience, that's where it starts to come alive. And so, Kevin, as you tell the stories, and Uğur, as you tell sort of, what happens and the flow seasonally, that's what helps our imaginations to dig down into why these things are happening, which leads towards what can we do about this in the future. So, Artie, any final words before we sign off from the webinar?
No, only that I've really appreciated the presentations, and as uncomfortable as it feels to talk about and contemplate and think about the fact that we have 152 million children in child labor, it's really important for us to be curious and to understand the contexts in order to have a regenerative future. It's not just about sustainability, but it's about regeneration for the future. So that's really what I wanted to say. And thank you for sticking to focusing on the problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. We look forward to the next one if you want to join them.